"You're dead to me," my son said over the phone. And I stood there in the kitchen, holding a dish towel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. It was a Tuesday. It's a kind of ordinary, nothing special day when your whole life can tilt quietly without warning. No thunder, no prelude. Just a single sentence hanging in the air, like dust after a demolition. I'm Ruth Merriman, 71 years old. And that was the moment I knew the world I'd built, the one I'd held together with casseroles, birthday cards, and small silences had finally spit me out. Subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching. Thanks. I didn't cry right away. I rinsed the towel and wrung it out. The faucet dripped in a slow rhythm like a ticking clock, and I stood listening to it. It took me a while to realize the line had gone dead. I think I stayed standing there for almost 20 minutes, my knees locked, my ears ringing, my mind folding in on itself like a slow, reluctant letter being sealed. He didn't stutter when he said it. No rage, no fire. It's cold finality, like he was closing a file. Wasn't even about the argument anymore, whatever that had been. I can't even recall what triggered it. Maybe I'd asked too many questions. Maybe I'd reminded him of something he wanted to forget. I raised him alone. From the time he was 5, it was just me and him. His father left before we had a chance. To stop hoping, I worked nights at the clinic, folded uniforms at home, took in mending when I could. Every birthday, every scraped knee, every fever that scared me stiff. It was me. It's just me. And I never made him feel the weight of it. At least, I tried not. 2. I didn't think I was perfect. I just thought I was enough. So when the words came and he said them like he meant them, it wasn't just pain. It was erasure. Like I'd never been there at all. The silence in the house felt different after that. It wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, brittle. I sat on the edge of my bed that night and stared at the carpet where the thread had unraveled slightly. He helped me lay that carpet once, years ago. We laughed about how crooked it was. He said it, gave the room character. I looked around and wondered how long he'd been holding this in. When did I stop being his safe place? Was it after he married her? After the baby? Was it long before that, when he started treating me like an errand instead of a mother? I didn't sleep much, drifted half awake, listening to the refrigerator hum like a tired old man trying to keep breathing. My son's voice replayed again and again. Not the words, but the tone. It's the coldness, the certainty. You're dead to me. The next morning, I made tea, sat by the window, watched a boy walk his dog. And in that quiet hour, I realized something that didn't come with anger or panic. It came with a strange, heavy calm. If I was dead, to him, I could stop living for him. I wasn't sure what that meant yet. Not exactly. But something had snapped free inside me. A weight had shifted. The old woman who packed his lunches, who kept his secrets, who stayed silent through years of slow dismissals. She was still in there, but she was no longer at the wheel. I folded my hands, breathed in slow. I didn't make a plan yet. I just let the silence hold me. It's like a warm bath after frost. And deep down, I knew. The next time they looked for me, they'd find someone they didn't recognize. The days after that phone call passed like fog. I moved through the house like a guest, like someone waiting for the host to return and explain why they weren't welcome anymore. But no one came. No explanation. No apology. Just the echo of his voice and a ringing absence where once there had been birthdays. Laughter, soup shared on tired nights. I started talking less, even to myself. I moved slower, not because of age, but because everything inside me had paused. I'd spent my life adjusting myself, softening, holding back, staying small enough to keep the peace. And now in this quiet house, I had no one left to make myself small for. I used to think silence was something to be avoided. Now I let it stretch out beside me at the dinner table, in bed, in the garden. I noticed things I hadn't before. The way the tree in the backyard leaned just slightly toward the light. The way the floor creaked near the door like it was remembering footsteps that no longer came. I tried not to think about what I'd done wrong. That list had never been written, but I knew it existed somewhere in his mind. I'd been too involved, or not enough. I'd said too much, or stayed too quiet. I'd shown up too often or not when it mattered. That's the thing about people who decide to erase you. They never explain the rules before they do it. I thought about the first time I held him. That new baby smell, that warmth, it slept against my chest, and I remember thinking, I'll never let anything hurt you. I hadn't known then that sometimes the hurt doesn't come from outside. Sometimes it grows up under your roof, shares your last name, and calls you by the name you cherish most. He hadn't used that word in a while. Not warmly, not with meaning. It turned into a formality. Something said through gritted teeth. In front of others, I think I began losing him long before that call, but I had refused to see it. He married a woman who never looked me in the eyes. She always smiled like there was a bitter taste in her mouth. At first I tried. I brought gifts. I cooked meals. I offered to help with the baby. She always had a reason to keep me at arm's length. She was polite, always, but never warm. I told myself she was tired. New baby, new marriage, new house. I made excuses the way mothers do. Let things go. One Christmas, I brought over a casserole and found the door locked, the lights off. They had forgotten to tell me they'd gone out of town. The next day, he said it had been a last-minute trip. He didn't ask how my holiday went. I told him anyway. Told him I'd eaten alone. That I watched an old movie and made cocoa. He didn't respond. Just changed the subject. That was years ago. And I still remember the way the casserole dish felt heavy in my arms as I walked back to the car. But I kept forgiving, kept showing up. I thought if I just stayed kind, they'd soften. That love would be enough to thaw whatever cold wall had been built between us. I see now that I mistook access for affection. Just because they let me in the house didn't mean they let me into their lives. The more I gave, the more invisible. I became DOT. It was the paperwork that finally brought it home. Literal, actual papers. That's how the betrayal became undeniable. A few months before that phone call, I'd gone to renew the deed transfer. Something my lawyer had told me I should do yearly just to keep the title in order. I'd put my son's name on the documents years ago when I thought I was protecting the house for him. A mother's way of leaving a legacy. I had trusted him. When I looked at the new file, I noticed something strange. A recent signature. Mine, not my lawyer's, his and hers. Without telling me, they'd moved my name from first position to second, then third. Then off entirely. I sat in the parking lot outside the courthouse and stared at the copy in my lap. It fluttered in, the wind as if it didn't want to be read. I held it down with one trembling hand. That's when it clicked. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the slow, deliberate undoing of me, done with politeness, with fake smiles, with forged signatures and quiet contempt. They were removing me from my own life. I went home that day and sat in my favorite chair, the blue one by the window. I thought about all the times I'd imagined growing old in that house, watching the baby grow up, rocking on the porch. Hosting holidays, I looked around and realized every picture on the wall, every memory belonged to a woman they no longer wanted around, and still. I didn't cry, I just reached for a pen, a notebook. I started writing things down, not angry things, just facts, dates, statements, copies, names, the small kind of paperwork that mothers keep in case their children ever need to remember. Who held their world together? I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning. Not of revenge, not of some loud confrontation, just the beginning of my quiet return to myself. I closed the notebook, made tea, sat with the silence again, and I whispered to it, not yet. But soon. I waited before doing anything, not out of fear, but out of precision. I wanted no one to say I had acted in haste or bitterness. The notebook stayed on the coffee table, closed but present. Some evenings I'd rest my hand on it like you do with a sleeping dog. Not to wake it, just to remember it's there. I still answered his texts, brief ones. He didn't know yet that I knew. That I had the deed copy, the forged forms. He still messaged like nothing had changed. Asked if I'd taken my medication. Reminded me about a doctor's appointment I'd already canceled. He was still playing son, just enough to keep up appearances. I didn't confront him. What would that have done? I'd be labeled emotional, confused, dramatic. He'd say I misunderstood, that it was all a paperwork error, that I was tired, that I wasn't well. Instead, I listened, watched, paid attention to their silences. One morning, I went to retrieve the folder where I kept my marriage license and found it missing. It had always been tucked behind the tax returns. I checked 3 times. Nothing. My hands began to shake, but I steadied them on the edge of the drawer. Later that week, I noticed my jewelry box was lighter. The gold bracelet my mother had given. Me, gone. Just gone. No signs of forced entry. Nothing disturbed. Missing pieces. Like someone slowly unraveling the story of me from inside the walls. I didn't say anything. I started scanning documents and sending them to myself. I emailed copies of the original deed, my insurance papers, the letters from the bank with my name still printed on the top line. I forwarded them to an address I had created quietly under a new name. Not a fake name, just a version of me I was beginning to reclaim. One that didn't ask for permission to exist. I visited the library on Tuesdays, sat near the window, logged in, checked the files. One afternoon, I saw a notification from the mortgage lender. They had changed the mailing address. My name wasn't listed anymore. I printed that page, and that was the day the anger finally arrived. But not the kind that makes you yell. This anger was cold, still, like a pond in late winter, when the surface looks solid, but if you step wrong, you'll drown. In silence, I brewed tea, sat in my usual chair, listened to the radiator hum and hiss like it was trying to speak. They were emptying the house of me slowly, a little each month, like clearing a memory, one drawer at a time. But I was still there, and I still had my name and my voice. The next morning, I made 2 appointments. One with a lawyer, one with a notary. I didn't tell anyone. I wore the same old coat and took the same old bus. No one suspected a thing. It's not even the driver, who nodded at me like I was. Just another retiree going to get her knees checked. The lawyer's office was small, clean, smelled like lemon polish and something faintly floral. He looked young, probably younger than my son, but he listened. More than my son had in years. He let me speak. He let the pauses stretch. He asked questions softly. I showed him the copies. It's the new deed, the signature. It's the letter from the bank? He nodded slowly, then looked up at me. Did you consent to this? I said no. Do you still have the original documents? I said yes. He didn't rush to promise anything. Just said we had options. Said it would take time, but we could begin. I said that was fine. I wasn't in a hurry anymore. The notary visit was shorter. It's just one form I needed certified. One declaration of awareness. It was the first time in months I signed my full name. In ink. Ruth Elaine Merriman. The pen felt heavier than usual. I wrote slowly, carefully, as if I was anchoring myself to the page. On the way home, stopped by the bakery near the corner and bought a small almond tart. I sat on a bench and ate it with my fingers. Let the crumbs fall. Let the sun hit my face for the first time in weeks. No one knew what I was doing, and that felt right. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted my life back. The following weekend, I stayed home. Didn't go to the Sunday lunch they'd invited me to out of obligation. He sent a message, said they'd save me a plate. I replied, thank you, but I wouldn't be coming. No reason, no excuse. Just a sentence. That was new for me, she responded later. Her text was clipped. Hope everything's okay? I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the closet and began to pack. One suitcase, just the essentials. I didn't plan to vanish overnight. I wasn't running, but I wanted to be ready. To choose when I left, not wait to be pushed. I put the deed. Copy on top, the notebook beneath it. The bracelet had been stolen, but not the photo of my mother wearing it. I tucked that in too. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. No dreams, just stillness. And in the morning, I called the number listed under a real estate agent's flyer I'd kept tucked in my kitchen drawer. A kind-looking woman with soft eyes and a firm voice. I told her I might be interested in selling. She asked if I'd like a consultation. Said yes. She asked when I looked around the house. My house. My father's porch swing still in the yard. The shelf with the ceramic ducks I'd collected over 40 years. It's a window where my son used to sit and read. I said, "How about tomorrow?" She arrived right on time. Her name was Lydia. She wore a gray blazer with soft lines and smelled like lavender. Her shoes made no sound on the hardwood floor. She moved through the house with the same quiet respect I used to have when checking on my sleeping son. She didn't ask questions at first, just looked, noted, absorbed. She stood near the fireplace and said, "It's a good structure, solid bones." I nodded. That was all I could offer at the time. I hadn't fully decided, not yet. But something inside me was shifting. Selling the house had always felt like an ending, a kind of death. But now it felt more like closing a door that had been swinging in the wind for too long. Lydia asked if I wanted to list it publicly or privately. I told her, privately. No signs, no open houses, just one buyer, one transfer, one quiet goodbye. She understood. There was something gentle in the way she looked at me. Like she could see what had happened without needing the details. She took photos, measurements, promised discretion. I walked her to the door and stood for a long time after she left, staring at the knob I used to hear turn when my boy came home late. Full of stories, it didn't hurt as much anymore. Just felt faded. Like a movie I once loved, but now couldn't remember all the scenes of. That week, I cleaned every room. Not to impress a buyer, but for myself. I washed the windows, wiped the baseboards, scrubbed the tiles in the guest bathroom, the one they never used, the one I always kept ready. I wanted to feel the place again before it left me. I wanted to remind the walls that I had been here, that I had loved here. I sat on the porch swing in the evenings, wrapped in a shawl, watched the neighbors walk their dogs, listened to the wind move through the trees like an old hymn. Nobody knew I was preparing to go. That felt like a blessing. My son called once during those days, just once. I didn't pick up. I let it ring. I watched the screen go dark. No message, no follow-up. Just silence, like always. It felt different now, not like rejection, but confirmation. When Lydia returned 3 days later, she brought a folder and a quiet smile. She said she had found a buyer, a widow, newly retired, looking for something quiet and familiar. I asked if she seemed kind. Lydia said yes. That was enough. We went over the terms. My name would be restored on the official paperwork before transfer. The forged version would be invalidated. Everything would be legal. Clean, honest. Lydia said she'd never seen a seller so calm. I smiled, but didn't explain. Calm isn't always peace. Sometimes it's what grows where rage used to live. I signed the papers page by page. My name flowed slowly but firmly. Ruth Merriman. Again and again. Afterward, I didn't feel grief. I felt space, like something long clenched had finally let go. That night, I told no one. I packed the rest of my things the next day. It's just 2 bags. Left behind the furniture, the dishes, the heavy things. I only took what carried memory gently. Photographs, letters, my shawl, the small jade figurine my mother gave me on my wedding day, and the notebook. It's always the notebook. I booked a room at a motel a few towns over. It's one of those places where no one asks questions and the sheets are always crisp. I didn't tell Lydia where I was going, didn't leave a forwarding address. I left a single envelope taped inside the pantry door. Inside it, the new owner would find the original blueprints of the house and a note that read, "I was here. I cared for this place. Hope it's good to you." I closed the front door behind me. No ceremony. No looking back at the motel. The air conditioner buzzed softly. The bedspread was plain. The silence felt kind. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the notebook, and wrote a line I'd been waiting to write. I have taken myself back. Later that evening, I walked to a small diner down the road, ate soup by myself, listened to two old men argue gently about baseball. When I returned, I took a long, slow shower, let the water run over my shoulders like a baptism. The next morning, I bought a new phone, new number, paid in cash. I gave the name Elaine, my middle name. The woman at the counter smiled and didn't ask questions. I liked her for that. I changed my bank details, transferred what was mine into a new account, secured. Private, I called my lawyer to confirm the sale. Had gone through? He said yes, and I said thank you, then hung up before he could ask more. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done. Done waiting to be seen. Done hoping for softness from people who had hardened themselves against me. Done believing that blood obliges us to endure unkindness. I left the motel after 5 nights. Found a small apartment with windows that faced the sun in the morning. I watered a fern I bought from a corner shop. I made tea every day at the same time. I wrote letters I never sent. No one knew where I had gone, and for the first time in years. Neither did I, but it felt right. Like the beginning of something I didn't have to explain. They didn't realize I was gone until they needed something. That's how it always was. It's not when I was quiet. It's not when I stayed too long after dinner, or brought over soup no one asked for. But when something was missing, then they noticed. Then I existed again. It started with a voicemail, just one dot. "Hey, Mom. Just wondering where you are. Can you call me?" His voice was light, but it cracked near the end. I listened to it once, then again, and then deleted it. The second message came 2 days later. "Okay, this is getting ridiculous. We've been trying to reach you. Did you change your number?" No greeting this time, no softness. Just entitlement dressed up like concern. I didn't respond. The texts followed, not from him, from her. "Can you please let us know what's going on? We need to sort out the tax stuff. Call me back." You're making things complicated for no reason. Each one colder than the last. Each one sounding more like a business partner and less like a daughter-in-law. If she ever was one, I'd turn the phone off. The part of me that used to ache for their voices, that part had gone quiet. I didn't want to explain where I was or why I had left. It's because they already knew, even if they pretended not to. They didn't miss me. They missed the house, the security, the way I made things easier. They missed what I gave, not who I was. I imagined the moment they realized the deed was no longer in their names. The panic, the scramble, the meetings with some lawyer who would explain in simple terms that none of their changes had held, that Ruth Merriman had reversed everything, that the house now belonged to someone else, legally, permanently. I imagined her scrolling through old emails, trying to find proof she never had. I imagined him sitting on the couch, holding his head in his hands, asking how this could have happened. I didn't feel sorry. Let them feel, just once, what it's like to be on the outside of something you thought was yours. I walked every morning now, just 20 minutes around the new neighborhood. It's past the bakery that opened too early. It's past the post office where a man in a green cap sorted mail with his back always straight. I saw the same woman most mornings walking a dog too small for its leash. She waved, I waved back. Nothing more. That was enough. I stopped wearing my wedding ring, not out of anger, just because it didn't mean anything anymore. My husband had been gone for almost 30 years. My son didn't speak to me with love. The ring was just a relic now, something that once held meaning, but now only shimmered with absence. I placed it in a small box beside my mother's figurine, not hidden, just Put away. I went to the library again, sat in the back, watched the sunlight move across the carpet as the hours passed. I wrote more now. Not letters, not complaints, just memories. Lines of thought, tiny confessions. One day I wrote, I thought love meant staying. But maybe love, real love, knows when to go. I saw a flyer for a free art class on Thursdays. I tore off the tab with a phone number. I haven't drawn anything since school, but I liked the idea of color, of making something. I made soup one night, just for myself, sat at the small kitchen table and ate every spoonful. Slowly, I used to rush through meals. It's too many years of being needed, interrupted, dismissed. Now, no one asked me for anything, and for the first time, that didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. Like a blank page. I checked the voicemail once a week. Nothing new. Then, after 10 days of silence, his voice came through again. Mom, please. We just want to talk. That was all he said. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. No mention of the forged papers or the missing bracelet or the years of small cuts that finally broke the skin. I turned the phone off again. Some days I missed him. Not the man he was now, but the boy who used to ask me to stay in the room until he fell asleep. It's the one who held my hand when we crossed streets, who brought home hand-drawn cards on Mother's Day with hearts that never quite closed. But that boy was gone, and I had to mourn him quietly. Like a mother mourning a child no one else knew had died. I went to the art class. I sat in the back, said my name was Elaine. We were told to draw something we missed. I thought for a long time. Then I drew a porch. Swing. Just that. A simple wooden bench, suspended by 2 quiet chains. The teacher passed by and said, "That's peaceful." I nodded. It was no one in that room knew who I had been. No one expected anything from me but presence, and that felt like something close to love. They didn't stop. The messages kept coming. Not every day, but often enough to remind me they hadn't found peace in my silence. He left voicemails now, longer ones, sometimes angry, sometimes soft, always circling around the same question. Why? I never answered, 'cause he already knew. People always know why you leave. They just don't want to say it out loud. One day I walked past a park with a little pond tucked behind a row of willows. I sat on the bench facing the water and watched a young girl feed crumbs to the ducks. Her mother stood nearby holding a thermos and smiling like she had time. The girl laughed each time the ducks quacked. High-bellied, deep laugh that only children have. I felt it in my bones. The memory of it, the absence of it. That was the hardest part of leaving. Not the house, not the old routines, but the grandchild I barely knew. A baby girl I once held for 10 minutes in a hospital room, filled with cold glances and over-explained boundaries. She cried when I handed her back. I told myself it meant something. But she was just hungry. I sometimes imagined what she looked like now. If she had my eyes, she'd ever ask about the woman in the photographs they kept turning face down. I would never poison her against her parents. That's not who I am. But I hoped one day, when she was older, she'd wonder why no one talked about me. And I hoped she'd find a letter I'd left behind, sealed, hidden in a book of poems. A letter that didn't blame, didn't beg, just told the truth gently. Your grandmother loved you, from far away, in silence, in strength. I didn't check the voicemail for a while. 2 weeks passed. I spent my days walking, drawing, sitting in the cafe near the train station with a small notebook and a cup of tea that always went cold before I finished it. One afternoon, I returned to the motel to grab a box I had left behind and decided, almost without thinking, to listen. There were 4 new messages. The first was from her. We know what you did. I hope you're proud of yourself. The second was shorter. This is cruel. Mom, this isn't you. The third, and I still don't know why this one stuck in my throat, was just silence. 10 seconds of it. As if someone had called, pressed the phone to their chest, and just breathed. The last one came from a number I didn't recognize. Man's voice? Unfamiliar. This is Randall from Everwise. Legal. We've been retained by Mr. Merriman regarding a property dispute and need to speak with you about your involvement. Please return our call by stop the recording. It didn't scare me. It just confirmed what I already knew. They weren't trying to reach me out of love. They were trying to get back what they thought they'd lost. I closed the phone and walked to the window. The sky was pale, flat. I watched a bird land on a wire and shake its wings twice before flying away. That evening, I called my lawyer, told him what I'd heard. He listened carefully, said not to worry. Everything was airtight. Date, the documents, the timeline, the chain of events. He told me they were scrambling. People like this always did. Once they realized the person they dismissed had power. I didn't feel powerful. I just felt done. Finished with defending my right to exist. I asked if I needed to respond to the legal firm. He said no, not unless I wanted to. I didn't. Let them waste their breath. Let them go door to door looking for a version of me that no longer lived at that address. Later that week, I mailed something. Not to them, to myself. A printed photo, one I had tucked away in a shoebox. It was of me and my son at a county fair. He was 7, his face sticky from cotton candy. Mine glowing from the joy of watching him laugh. I wore a red scarf. He held my hand. I wrote one line on the back. She did everything she knew how to do. When it arrived, I placed it on the new shelf in my new apartment. No frames, no glass. It's just resting there, free to breathe. That night, I lit a candle. Not for them. For me, I sat in the quiet and listened to it flicker. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop waiting to be chosen. I wasn't his home anymore, but I had become mine. It was the rhythm that saved me the morning walks, this small cup of tea, the market on Saturdays where the woman at the jam stall always gave me an extra spoonful to taste, the notebook with its worn corners, the sound of a pencil scratching across the page. Stopped needing to explain myself, even to myself. I saw a sign one day outside a church. Not one of those heavy, solemn places. It's just a small white chapel with chipped paint and crooked wooden steps. The sign said, "Wednesday evenings lost and found, all welcome. Come as you are." I didn't believe in much anymore. Not religion. Not the kind of forgiveness people preach, but never practice. But something about that phrase stayed with me. Come as you are. I went the following week. It wasn't what I expected. No sermons, no pews. Just a circle of folding chairs and a handful of people who looked tired, kind, and mostly quiet. I called it a listening group. You could speak or not. You could cry or not. You could just sit and be seen. That night, I sat. They introduced themselves with first names only. One woman said she was grieving a daughter she'd never get back. Another man spoke of losing his job after 30 years and not knowing who he was without it. When it was my turn, I simply said, "Ruth," no story, no explanation, just my name, spoken aloud like it mattered. The facilitator, a soft-spoken man with thick glasses and a notebook he never wrote in, just nodded. That was enough. I went back the next week and the one after. I still didn't say much, but I listened. And I was listened to. That was new. I hadn't realized how starved I was for gentle spaces. Places where no one asked me what I'd done to deserve what happened. Where no one measured my pain against their comfort. One evening, as we were leaving, a woman named Jean walked beside me and said, "I like your silence. It's warm." I didn't know what to say to that, so I smiled. Warm silence. I carried that phrase with me for days, like a shawl. Like a name dot at home, I began to move things around. Not out of restlessness, but to make space. For what? I wasn't sure. But it felt necessary. I bought a small potted tree for the corner by the window. Watched it bend toward the light over time. I rearranged the kitchen drawers, throwing out things I no longer used. Measuring spoons for meals I no longer cooked. Cookie cutters in the shape of stars I once used for a child who no longer called me anything at all. Letting go of objects was easier than I thought. Some nights I'd write letters. To no one in particular. I never mailed them. Just folded them and tucked them into an old recipe tin I kept beside the stove. One night I wrote, "You don't owe them the rest of your life just because you gave them the beginning." Another night. Maybe I was never meant to be remembered by them. Maybe I was only meant to remember myself. I started keeping a jar beside the bed. Every week I'd write one line of something beautiful I noticed. I called them my proofs. The way the sky turned to honey just before dusk, the smell of bread, rising in the neighbor's apartment. The way my shoulder stopped aching in the silence. One morning, I received a letter with no return address. The handwriting was familiar, slightly slanted. My son's. I held it for a long time before opening. The envelope was thin. The paper folded twice. It said, "I don't know where you went, but I miss you. I'm sorry for everything." That was all. No signature, no attempt at explanation. No undoing of what had been done. I placed it in the recipe tin with the rest of my letters. Not because I forgave him, not yet, but because I wanted the reminder. Some things do reach you, even when you leave no trail behind. I didn't write back. That week, I drew another picture in art class. A single chair. Empty, but facing a window. The instructor asked what it meant. I said, "It's where I sit when I feel most like myself." She smiled. Didn't press. No one in that room knew what I had walked away from, but they saw me anyway. That was enough. I saw him again in the grocery store. I hadn't planned it. I didn't even know they came to this side of town. I was in the bread aisle, holding a loaf of sourdough I didn't really need when I heard my name. Not Mom, not Mother. Ruth. I turned. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just less certain. His hair was messier. The dark circles under his eyes looked older than he was. For a moment, neither of us moved. I said nothing. He walked toward me slowly, like he wasn't sure I'd stay, like I might vanish. His voice was quiet. "I didn't think I'd actually run into you still." I said nothing. He looked down at the loaf in my hands and smiled in that way people do. When they're trying to soften something too sharp to touch directly, you look. "Well," he said. I didn't answer. Couldn't give him the comfort of small talk. Not after everything. He shifted his weight. "I don't know how to begin," he said. "I've been thinking about what to say for months. Every version sounded wrong." I looked at him and I said, "The only thing I'd been holding inside for too long? You lied. You stole. You erased me." His eyes dropped. "I know." I waited. But he didn't offer more, so I spoke again, not angrily, but clearly. "You let her turn you against me. You let her take things that weren't hers. Ka. You forged my name and sat in my house like I had already died." His mouth opened, then closed. Ka. He looked like a boy again, lost, drenched in guilt but still too proud to kneel. He said, "I thought you were being controlling, that you didn't trust me, that everything was always about what you wanted." I stared at him for a long moment. "I gave you everything, and you handed it away like it was nothing." He didn't argue. "I'm sorry," he said finally. But he said it like someone offering a tissue to a woman at a funeral he showed up late to. I nodded once. But I didn't say I forgave him. I didn't tell him I understood. He looked around the store like it might save him. Like he wanted someone to interrupt us, but no one came. No one ever does when it matters. He took a breath. "Are you happy?" It was the first real question he'd asked me in years. I said, "Yes." He hesitated. "Do you think we could ever fix this?" I looked at the shelves. At the quiet, ordinary rows of bread. I thought about how many times I'd stood in grocery stores over the years, thinking about what everyone else needed, what he would eat, what she liked, what the baby could digest. I looked back at him. "No, I don't think we can fix it." "But we don't have to keep breaking it either." His face changed. He didn't smile, but some tension fell away from his shoulders. I'm not coming back, I said softly. I've built something different now. Something small. And it's mine. He nodded. I understand, but I don't think he did. Not really. Not yet. He stepped forward slightly like he wanted to hug me. I didn't move. Instead, I said, I hope you learn how to love without taking. I hope she does too. And then I walked away. Left the bread behind on the shelf. I didn't look back. Outside, the light was soft. That kind of late afternoon gold that makes everything look tender. Okay? Even things that aren't. I sat in my car and let my hands rest on the wheel. Not shaking, not numb, just still. Something had closed. Not with a slam. Just with a sigh. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Some goodbyes don't need words. Just space. That night, I lit another candle. This one, lavender. I took out the recipe tin and added one more folded paper to the stack. This one said, today. I stood in front of the past and chose not to kneel before it. I slept deeply. No dreams. Just breath. Some mornings I still wake before the sun. The room is quiet. The sky outside still undecided. And for a few moments, I forget where I am. I reach for the old sounds, a floorboard creak, a cabinet door clicking shut, the hush of a child trying not to wake me too early. But they're not here. Not anymore. I sit by the window and let the light come to me. Slowly, this small apartment has become enough. Not because it's perfect, but because it doesn't ask anything of me. It holds me without needing my history, my explanations, my proof. No one here knows what I walked away from. And still I'm offered small kindnesses. Away from the woman with the poodle. It's a clerk who remembers I like my tea without sugar. It's a child who once gave me a paper heart with no reason at all. There's a rhythm now. Tuesdays, I go to the TI. Library. Thursdays, the art class. Fridays, the circle at the chapel where no one tries to fix you. They just listen. We had a new woman join last week. She cried through most of it, could barely get her name out. After, I handed her a tissue and said, you don't have to hurry. She squeezed my hand so tightly, I remembered what it was like. To be held after a long season of being invisible. I walk most afternoons. Sometimes I bring a sketch pad. Sometimes I just sit and watch the light shift through trees. I used to wonder what healing would look like. I thought it would be loud, triumphant, full of apologies and dramatic returns. But it isn't. It's quieter than people think. It's a drawer that no longer stings when you open it. A song that plays in a cafe and doesn't stop your breath. A name you hear and feel nothing sharp behind your ribs. It's the absence of ache. That's all. I haven't spoken to them since that day in the grocery store. I don't need to. I've said everything that needed saying. My absence is the only truth left. I don't know what they tell the little girl. If they mention me at all. If they call me difficult or dramatic or simply gone. Maybe they say I moved. Maybe they don't speak of me at all. I've made peace with that. I left behind pictures, letters, soft fragments of myself that one day, she ever searches, might find their way to her hands. She'll know if she wants to know. And if not, it's her choice. Just as walking away was mine. There's something else I've started doing. Each month, I write myself a letter. Not long. It's just a few sentences. I seal it and tuck it into a box under my bed. I call it my record of staying. This month, I wrote, you were not the villain they made you into to feel less guilty about leaving you behind. You were the map, the roof, the open door. And when they tried to rewrite your story, you walked out with the truth in your hands. You stayed soft. You didn't disappear. You reappeared elsewhere. I think that's what survival is, in the end. Not noise, not vengeance, just redirection. They gave me an ending. I wrote myself another chapter. I walk differently now. Straighter, slower. I no longer rush to cross streets. I no longer soften my footsteps to avoid being in the way. I fill my own space. Quietly, fully. Sometimes I sit at the kitchen table and light a candle for the woman I used to be. The one who whispered instead of asking. The one who waited too long to leave rooms that no longer wanted her. I tell her it's okay now. You're safe. Last week I gave the recipe tin away. The letters inside just the container. A young neighbor had admired it. I told her it belonged to someone I used to be. She didn't ask for details, just smiled. The letters now live in a fabric pouch, tucked in a drawer with my scarves. They feel closer that way. I've begun writing a new list, not of memories, but of beginnings. The first morning, I didn't think of them. The first time I laughed without guilt. The first afternoon, I danced alone in socks to a song no one else could hear. They say blood is thicker than water, but I've found warmth in tea with strangers. In the folded hands of people who never once called me mom but still called me friend. That matters more. In the end, what we call ourselves is less important than how we choose to live once. No one's calling at all. I used to fear disappearing. Now I understand I was never meant to disappear. I was meant to become unfindable to those who refused to see me in the first place. I've stopped asking what they think of me. I've stopped asking what I could have done differently. I've started asking what brings me stillness, what brings me home. Tonight, I'll make soup for one. I'll watch the light leave the sky without dread. I'll sit by the window with a blanket and a pen and write down one more truth. This time, I decide who gets to call me anything else. The end.